Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's IGTV. Today I'm talking about disconnected dads. What it feels like as a mom to parent alone. Whether you're married, whether you're separated, and you're co-parenting, the level of emotional weight, exhaustion, and just overall frustration. Sorry, I'm just centering this. When you feel like you are doing this alone, and no matter how much you beg and plead, dad just is not coming to the table. Maybe dad doesn't want to participate. Maybe they are, really in the authoritarian, and that's what they were raised with, and that's what they know. And maybe it's the frustration of feeling super polarized in your parenting efforts. And so you're feeling like all of your efforts as a mom are being, or other parent are being undone. And so every move you make, you finally get your teens kind of, go, and then it's all undone. When dad shows up on the scene or attempts to play a role. So I understand that this is a hot topic, and if you're already offended, stay, because this might not be going the way that you think it's going to. So this is a critical conversation that I am very passionate about as a boy mom. And thanks to the Barbie movie, I think this is being talked about more, but we need to talk about it now, like now. So I'm going to dive in, and I got my notes. All right. My name is Allie Payne. I'm a certified life coach, certified relationship systems coach. I've been working with parents of teens, families for the last 16 years to help them end the painful disconnection, emotional blow-ups, stressful silences, and create healthy, lasting relationships built on mutual trust and respect. So you actually have conversations, meaningful conversations, and feel calmer and in your own house, and more confident as a parent because you're already doing a great job. All right, so let's jump into this one. So I get this message a lot. From really loving, courageous moms who say, like, I'm trying all of your tools. I'm trying to do all this, but I'm doing it alone. And every time my husband or my kid's dad shows up, it's like, everything I tried was undone, or I'm begging them to come to the table and play this new parenting game that we're learning based on, decades of data, and we're trying to, shift how we parent. We're trying to, and dad just doesn't care, isn't willing, and I feel more isolated and more alone and more effing exhausted. And if there's a way to feel more exhausted parenting teens, I don't know what it is. But parenting with what feels like a disconnected dad, or, I get is that's pretty much it. Or the messages I get say, like, dad is trying, like, he wants to help, he wants to play a role in this, but he seriously doesn't know how. And then when I show him your tools or whatever, he's like, nope, or kind of maybe tries for like a day or two and then doesn't do it. Or worse yet, you're trying to create a shift in the way that you parent for your kids and the relationships that they grow up in. And dad is so uncomfortable with it, he's polarizing and going completely the other way. The term Disney dad comes to mind. And like being like the super passive, permissive one. Or I also get the messages where you're trying to install respectful parenting and dad is very stuck in authoritarian and believes you're being too easy and tries, you get where I'm going with this, right? It's a constant struggle. It's a constant struggle. And yeah, it is the dad's loss, but listen, follow me through on this, okay? Because I'm not here to blame and shame anybody. I am simply describing what is currently happening. I am not here to blame and shame dads. So I want to make that real clear. Okay? Let's walk this through. All right. So when this is happening, what do people say to the mom to mamas. What do people say to mamas? Well, just never mind. Just leave him. If he's not going to do it, then too bad, you know? And so, yes, I appreciate that. So yes, so moms do what? Moms dig in further. Now, maybe dad is physically more away from the home. Maybe dad is physically out of the home doing work or whatever. So what do people tell moms to do? Well, just do it. Like, I mean, feel sorry for him kind of. Like, he's busy. He has a lot on his plate, you know? So, you know, does he really need to do what you're asking him to do? Like, I mean, really? So there's this whole patriarchal message that is proven, and I'm not just talking hot air here, okay? There's this whole patriarchal message to women, to moms that say, well, you know, you should be more empathetic and more compassionate with dad, the disconnected dad, because he has a lot on his plate. You know, he has a lot of stress at work, or he has a lot of stress in his life and you know, full-time job and like paying the bills, or like if that's the traditional home you have, which great, no judgment, no shame, like whatever. Maybe you also work too, I don't know. Or again, maybe if dad's out of town more, they're like, well, what can he do? Like, he's not around, so it's kind of on you. Like, if you want to change, like, you know, he's doing what he learned. He's doing what he knows. So there's a bit of a message that says, stop asking so much of him, stop expecting so much from him. That as moms, we're supposed to be like, but dad goes to work and earns the money. And it's this whole blue job, pink job thing, which I have no problem with. So long as you and your partner, whoever you are, have negotiated it and it feels fair and workable to you, great. I don't care. Fill your boots. But the patriarchal cultural message says, stop expecting so much from him. Stop expecting so much. And dads play into this, because it's what they were taught as well. So, so as you're doing more, okay, moms are just supposed to do more, then you're disconnected from your partner, which isn't healthy and not helpful. And somehow you're supposed to expect less from boys as well. Not just expect less from dad, whether you're married or divorced or separated, but you're also supposed to expect less from boys. And this is statistically proven. And it starts very, very young. Is that as dad shows up as more disconnected or struggles to connect with teens specifically, why? Because the teen brain is basically in a giant, hot, messy, emotional mess. So they're struggling with that. Maybe they connected with them when they were a child, but dads are struggling to connect. And so we start to expect less of boys as well at right around the same time. Right around the same time. It's true. So, but what do people say to men? People say, oh my gosh, your wife, like, it's just hormones, you know, like she's just listen to her, take a breath, like she'll calm down. Men say, well, why is she asking so much of you? Like you go to work, you provide, you know, you bring home finances, you take out the garbage, you mow the lawn, you take care of the garage, and you help with the dishes. Like, oh my gosh, why is she asking so much of you? Might be because you would do those things if you lived alone and weren't a parent. Might just be because of that. But this is all the patriarchal messages. Okay, that we as women and men are being steeped in all the time. So what people say to men is, oh my gosh, like you're already doing so much. Like just, you know, you're a great dad. Like you're the coach of the team, or you go play catch with them, or you know, you play video games with them or whatever. Like you're a great dad. Like just ignore her. Like she's just on hormones or whatever. Like it'll be fine. That's what people say to dads. Yeah, that's great. Okay, so why is this not working? Why is this not working? Here's why. Because you are modeling every single moment. You are modeling what is normal for your son. Now, I'm a boy mom. I didn't raise daughters, okay? I am a daughter. I've been very close to my friends daughters and my nieces, but I am a boy mom, raised 2 boys. So your son is seeing what's going on with their dad. Your son is experiencing personally. It's called the father wound. The fundamental lack of emotional connection with their dad. And there is a trauma involved in that. Like, I'm not saying your kid's going to be broken and like mess up their whole lives, but this is studied. Okay. It's called the father wound. That the father we are raising sons in a time where where the dads are generally more disconnected emotionally, but love playing the authoritarian, and or from that polarizing perspective, seeing dad get to be the Disney dad as mom steps up into the authoritarian role, trying to, install respectful parenting and change, make some courageous changes in the kind of the life cycle of your family based on what you were learned and what you were taught, right? Excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold. So what's happening is your son is seeing this. Your son is seeing a couple things. Your son is seeing that mom does the heavy lifting. Mom does the emotional work. Moms are the ones that you depend on, not dad. Your son is seeing that mom is also the parent, the authoritarian. Mom is the one who's setting the rules, and dad gets to just like play it fun, be like the fun guy. Or you're seeing that perhaps mom is trying to be a little softer, like move the needle a little from authoritarian, which many of us were raised in, to respectful parenting, and dad is the authoritarian. So growing up seeing that dad might not play a lot of other connected roles, but dad is the power and authority and gets to show up and drop the gauntlet, draw the line, and his word goes with a power over everyone. Okay? So this is what your son is seeing. And guess what? Just like you are repeating what you learned at many unconscious levels, even when we say we're not going to and it's not working, your son is going to do the same. So your son is going to look for partners who overfunction for them. Your son is going to choose partners, I don't care what gender, who overfunction so that they can be in the role they saw their dad in. Just be with that for 1 second. This is why the overfunctioning mom with a disconnected dad is feeding the patriarchal cycle that we've all been programmed and inundated with in our brains, okay? So as a son, it's making it really okay and safer it's not inviting your son to play an emotionally intelligent role in their life. It's not inviting your son to play a role where they are emotionally connected to themselves, which we know is basically the antidote to almost all mental health, not disease, but mental health challenges. When we connect to self, and we can know what is going on and are attuned to what's going on in our brain and our body, because that's not being modeled for them with a disconnected dad. Okay. So, also your son will not only choose an over-functioning partner, because that's what they're seeing you, mama, do, but they're also going they're learning to underfunction. They're learning to aim low as a partner. They get to just show up and stuff is done. They get to show up and dinner's on the table. They get to show up and the house is clean. They get to show up and laundry's done. They get to show up and their kids are raised. They get to just enjoy what someone else is spending every day maintaining, even though they were part of creating that biologically, maybe building a house, maybe renovating a house, maybe working really hard on that. That's a one-time effort. Renovating, building, making a baby, one-time effort. That is not the emotional load of the daily maintenance and functioning to steward that creation, parenting, taking care of a home, taking care of a car. This is the construct that your son is seeing, that, make no mistake, my sweet dear friend, that your son is going to go repeat. If some things don't change, okay? Your son is also growing up with no expectation, again, of being vulnerable. They are not having self-expression modeled for them by their same-sex parent, which this is not a cut against straight, I don't care, whatever. This is just data, okay, about modeling same-sex parent stuff. Your son may not, they may participate in vulnerable emotional things with you, but they're not seeing how a dad or a partner, okay, a mature adult male partner, is going to participate in vulnerable conversations or the courage to really connect and understand someone, okay? So that is another reason it doesn't work. Here's some really scary data for you. There's a gentleman on TikTok that I follow. He's a PhD in masculinity and the science of masculinity and what happens in the male brain, etc. Did you know that these disconnected dads, who are all human and deserve the same love and respect as every other person, started the cycle at the age of 5? And this happens today and now in 2023. At the age of 5 is the first time in a young boy's life we can distinctly measure where they are told to not engage with their emotional experience. At the age of 5, young boys are taught not to experience express two particular things. Number 1 is fear, and number 2 is sadness. Fear and sadness, thanks guys, are not safe to be experienced at the age of 5. Want to know what happens at the age of 5? Our kids go to school. It's where young boys learn that the vulnerability, the luxury of vulnerability, emotional experience and expression is reserved for girls. That is the first place they learn it. 5 years old. Where they shouldn't wear pink. They shouldn't like pink or purple, God forbid. That they should be blue. And this is studied that in our school systems, and I'm not against teachers either, we were all raised in this effed up construct, okay? Is that at 5 years old is when, as a mama, to change this cycle, you need to pay the most attention to your 5-year-old being allowed to feel and express fear and sadness. To invite it. To allow them to feel it, experience it, process it, and let them know that it is in fact part of their human experience. Not a female experience or a pink experience, but a human experience, okay? Here's the second piece of data. This extrapolates out at 15 years old, okay? I don't have 3 hands, so 15, okay? At 15 years old, is the second distinct marker for young men that they are particularly vulnerable to and taught not to be vulnerable. There is a particular pressure at around 15 years old that young men express, the pressure put on them, social media doesn't help, to be tough, to be arrogant, to introduction to the seductiveness of having power over. people. That this is right and it's cooler and they're tougher, they'll have more friends, they're more appealing to a romantic partner, is when they are basically an asshat. And that the vulnerability of both feeling and self-expression needs to be shut down, because that kind of authenticity puts them at greater risk socially. Now, this complements the teen brain, because that is the stage for boys when the teen brain is going through its self-esteem dip, a natural, awesome part of the adolescent brain development, where they're going from the identity, a very simplistic identity of a young child, and their brain is literally just like removing that. Yep, just removing it, and going through the dip of now creating this new identity scaffolding, literally in their brain, that is required to become a mature adult with self-reflection. Okay, but in between those two things is this big self-esteem dip. And so this is why at 15 is one of the reasons that at 15, boys, I think, feel this pressure even more to not feel, not be authentic, but instead put on this crass, arrogant, tough, you can't touch me, like whole, you know what I'm saying, persona to feel safe, which is, that's survival, okay? So that's normal, to feel safe, and also to feel like they can fit in, which we know is the counterfeit version of true belonging, which is necessary for the healthy functioning of our brains, true belonging. So how do you, okay, so then at 15 is also when your son needs that connection from dad and modeling vulnerability, emotional feeling, however you model feeling, discussing messy emotions, being in messy conversations where there isn't an answer and no one needs to win, where it's just a messy soup of discovery or sharing, and there's nothing to be fixed or nothing to be said. 15 years old is when boys are looking to dads or other men, okay, to see what it looks like to be a man. Okay, and this is where the price of disconnected dads is coming to even more of a head, is you've already had 10 years since this first episode that we can study at 5 years old, where they're told not to experience fear and sadness. So we're not seeing their dad experience fear and sadness. And then at 15 to see they're more aware of roles. Like really, it's like really get like, what is the role of a guy? And like, you know, and a disconnected dad, this is one of the prices they're paying. And it's also, again, where they start being ready for romantic relationships. Excuse me. Being ready for romantic relationships. And so young boys are seeking relationships with partners that allow or tolerate or even exalt that shutting down, that arrogant, tough exterior, that disconnectedness. Maybe their romantic partner is used to that and has that as well. Okay? So what this is doing, if they're repeating, if the disconnected dad is repeating this cycle of emotional immaturity, a lack of presence, connection to self, others, and partner, like, are we seeing disconnected dads have rich relationships with friends? This is a massive mental health crisis for men right now, is that they generally feel lonely and don't reach out to connect with other men because it's seen as weakness. And so men are going through a horrific time in a very tough world and economic situation where they were taught they needed to be tough and be the provider and have power over and acquire things. And if that's not going well for them, or God forbid they start feeling, men don't have that same inherent reaching out, vulnerable connection that women are doing more than ever. And that men have never been taught. Men were never, that was never modeled for them. It was actually a right that was removed in teeny tiny micro moments by the hundreds of thousands in a patriarchal culture throughout their entire lives. So you're setting your daughters up. If you're a boy mom and you've also got a daughter, did you know that subtly there are different things you expect of your daughter than you do of your son? There are subtly different roles that you give your daughter than you give to your son. That you have different levels of participation, completion, mastery of skills of your daughter than you do of your son. And of course it goes both ways. But let's be real honest. This is how this cycle is perpetuating. Your son may be a dad one day. Maybe biologically, maybe in his community, maybe adoption, I don't know. But if you're sick and tired of a disconnected dad in your kids' lives, then you and I are going to have to put on our big girl panties and start showing up in a way that is changing this cycle, not repeating the cycle. Okay? Because I've always told my boys this. I will not look your future partner in the eye and say, I did the best I could. Good luck. I will not look your future partner in the eye and say, well, they just didn't learn how to do that. Like, well, can't you just do it for them? I mean, I always did it. Or your future partner look at me and say, can they not do this? And you say, well, I always did it for them. You could probably do it too. Hail to the no. Hail to the no. Want to know a secret? Both my kids won home ec awards. My kids got the highest marks in sewing. At the end of the year, they got the plaque. That's right, they beat all the girls. Because by the time they were 12 and 14 in high school, they'd already been doing crafts with me. Of all kinds. That all jobs are for all people. We can negotiate what works for us within our family, of course, but all jobs are for all people. We sit and cry together. We have hard conversations. I share hard feelings that I'm having with them, not because I expect them to carry it, but because I want them to see how I am feeling, how I attune to myself, how I express that, and how I manage through some of that. Not because they're my therapist either. It's brief. But it's what we are modeling for our boys. So here's what I recommend doing if you feel like you've got a disconnected dad in your kids' lives. First of all, we need to have some empathy. Because these dads were raised in the same construct that you and I were. And that's not their fault. It is their responsibility. It's not their fault. Okay? These dads were sons. These dads were boys. These dads were babies. These dads were raised in homes that perpetuated being a disconnected dad, as being good enough, as being exalted, all the things. So I recommend you talk about the patriarchy and how it's impacting both dads, because it is. They're lonelier and more disconnected from themselves than ever. And we have a mental health crisis for men. Okay? And how it's impacting you. Not compensating for it, but talk about it and how it's impacting you. I want you to invite the disconnected dad to play. Because if this is the construct that they were raised in, which is likely true, change is scary. Particularly the one area of their life that they were never invited into or given the luxury to explore and develop? Emotions. Acknowledge the fear level of someone asking you at 30, 40, 50 to participate in life in a way that was never available to you. Maybe you were a vegan because there was just you lived on a planet with no animals. And now you're going to have meat. And it wasn't like an ethical thing. You're just like, well, I don't even know. Like what the, huh? So we need to have a little empathy. Not excuses. Empathy. Empathy is not excuses. Okay? Invite, don't force. Okay? I want you to model, not make them. So if you're modeling emotional attunement, emotional connection to yourself as a mama, and you're modeling those things for your kids, then criticizing a disconnected dad is going to assure he's never going to participate because he feels shit on. He feels like he's always getting it wrong. He can't get it right. This is a decades-old pattern ingrained in that dad's life, in his brain. It's not going to change overnight. I want you to model, don't make him, and don't make him wrong when he doesn't do it. I want you to be kind. I want you to keep doing it. And I want you to be the plumb line for some kind of emotional, like, from the heavens, like for your kids to get this emotional intelligence and attunement that can save them from so many horrific pitfalls in their life and actually set them up for almost every success marker across the board. Model it, don't make the disconnected dad, and do not criticize him when he doesn't get it right. Encourage. Okay? Now, if he's not willing, okay, he's not willing. You can offer books, but you got to keep going because your sons are depending on it. And if you're going to wait for the disconnected dad to get on board, good Lord, it's too late for these sons. Now is the time for your sons. Now. I have a saying I was taught, hope for everyone, wait for no one. Because if you're waiting, you're going to feel resentful, frustrated, and disconnected from perhaps your partner or your marriage. Hope they see it. Hope they come along, but don't keep waiting for them because your sons' lives are depending on it. All of their future relationships are depending on this. And I know it's like really another thing on women. I get it, but hear me out, okay? I want you to acknowledge the cultural truths and the effed up construct that failed all of us. All of us. Acknowledge that with this disconnected dad. Talk to him about it. What was it like for you to grow up in this effed up construct? What were you taught was tough and normal and okay? What were you taught was unsafe and pink and just for girls and you shouldn't go there, or you'd be a fag, or you'd be gay, or those were the very derogatory words used when I was growing up for young boys who had emotional connection, God forbid. Okay? Talk about it with the disconnected dad so that you invite him to the conversation rather than dissing him every time he gets it wrong. Okay? I want you to acknowledge that fear of change. That, like, why do you think that authoritarian parenting and authoritarian structures in our education institute continue to flourish? Because they feel linear. They feel safe. You're dealing with this much of human behavior. The emotion, or the behavior. But we all know that that's not where everything goes on. That's not the secret sauce. It's in the emotions. But people don't go there because it feels wildly unsafe. It's not linear. It's a hot mess. And you can't control it the same way. You can pretend that you control behavior. And you really are just pretending. Okay? But this is what disconnected dads were raised in, is that their job was to have authority, okay, and power over. That's what made them a worthy man, was to exercise authority, even if it was completely inappropriate. I don't know where that's happening anywhere in the world. And have power over to acquire. Okay? That's what they were taught. So we need to acknowledge the fear of not being in authority. And if you're in a relationship with a disconnected dad, marriage, co-parenting, or otherwise, where you feel like you're the authoritarian, but your disconnected dad is more like a Disney dad, okay, then acknowledge that polarization. Don't try and get pissy about the polarization. Talk about the polarization. What feels scary to you about, being an authority, about connecting to kids? Because that still is a way of just dealing with behavior. Whether you're the authoritarian behavior or you want to be the nice guy, you're still using behavior. You're not actually connecting, okay? Talk about it. Talk about the courage that it takes to challenge the norm. Talk about the courage that takes. And what is it going to take for our sons to have to deal with what we don't? What is it going to take to look your grandkids in the eye or your son in future relationships that seem to not quite hit the mark? Because they are now struggling with, saddled with, or dealing with what you and your disconnected dad didn't. And I'm not saying get it perfect, okay? This isn't about perfect. This is simply about the awareness to begin to change the construct. That's what I said, construct. So this happens all the time for parents in my programs. I get parents in my programs all the time where sometimes it's the dad. Most of the times it's the mom who's coming to my program and saying, Dad is totally disconnected. I'm so sick and tired of trying to do this alone. I need a community. I need support. I need tools. Dad's not on board. Dad's not on board. Dad's not on board. Guess what? Dad comes on board because they start to see that the invitation of emotions and vulnerability, which follows all of the science and research, into the relationship you have with your teen. And now the kind of relationship, the depth of connection relationship you have, therefore, the kind of authority that isn't required over them because you've built a level of mutual respect, not being their bestie. You're still the parent. But you've developed a level of mutual respect that you don't need power over them. So you're spending a lot less time in consequences and grounding and punishments, and you seem calmer and you seem happier, and your kids will come to you with their challenges. Your kids come to you when shit hits the fan, when the wheels fall off. They're not going to disconnected dad like maybe they used to when they were a kid. And all of a sudden, I've had this happen thousands of times. Disconnected dad starts coming to the table. Now, this isn't about doing it your way. Oh, I love you, sweet mama, I love you. But that's not going to happen. You are two different people. You have two different experiences. You have different values and beliefs. They're not going to come to the table and do it your way. So I'm just going to no. But they start to come to the table and take on their own flavor of relearning, their own flavor of research-based science facts tools that are in my programs. And your marriage, your relationship with your partner, even your relationship with a co-partner can improve. And did it mean there was this extra weight on you and you had to start the process? Yeah, it did. But I want to make something real clear. I'm a boy mom. And I sure as shoot was not going to raise boys to be more disconnected dads who got the shit end of the stick because they were not allowed to be whole and fully human at home, because the messages they get culturally about shutting down at the age of 5 and reinforced again at 15 were going to happen in my house. You want to bet that's a hot no. Now, my kids are young adults. I don't know what kind of dads, if they're going to be dads. I don't know. That's their choice. But they do have emotional connection. We do have rich, vulnerable, hard conversations even ones where they're mad at me, because I'm not perfect. And also, I am undoing having been the overcompensating mom and raising boys who believe their partner will just handle things for them. I did that. I did that to a degree. And I am currently undoing some of that. So I am putting myself right smack in the middle of this conversation, because I want to make it very clear to them again that their partner is not supposed to overcompensate for their lack of showing up and contribution. That relationships are not something you go into to consume from. Relationships are something you go into to contribute, and such that you contribute, you will also consume. And I'm undoing some of that. I didn't do that well. This video will be posted here on Instagram, it'll be on YouTube, and it'll be on Facebook. So I want to just close this out. Emotions are for all, and emotions are for humans. Not just for pink or for girls. Emotions are for all, and the time to start including that more, even more in your sons' lives is now. Okay, it's time to start inviting disconnected dads to the table now. Listen more than you talk, especially to young boys. To invite them into a rich sense of emotional experience, emotional expression, self-advocacy, to attune to what they are feeling such that they can speak for themselves. And I know as a mom, as an overfunctioner, that's tough. I want you to do it today. Zip it. I want you to listen more than you talk. I want you to use healthy relationship tools like boundaries as they were intended to increase trust and respect and model power with. Not because you're giving up your necessary hierarchical structure of being a parent, okay? But because you want to model for them power with, not needing power over, okay? So you're not going to use threats, ultimatums, punishment, emotional coercion to get them to do what you want them to do. Because that's all power over. We're not modeling that anymore. We're modeling healthy relationship tools that build mutual respect, trust, and power with, where you are the mentor, okay? You are not equal in authority. I can't say that enough. It's just not a misuse of authority. Those unhealthy relationship tools that men were often taught by their dads, physical force, okay, having power over, those instantly disconnect. They disconnect the child from their own experience. They disconnect in the relationship, and they shut down vulnerability. We're not going to do that with young boys anymore. I want you to seek to understand. And that requires a lot more listening and less talking and less overcompensating, ladies, gorgeous, courageous mamas you are. Stop overcompensating for your sons. Stop expecting different from them than you do from your daughters. Look at the expectations, the chores around the house that you are expecting of a daughter that you may not from a son. Do you expect less from your son? Because whatever you're doing with your son now is what he's going to go model in future relationships. And are you willing to look their partner in the eye and say, I taught them that. I taught them that that was normal. If you're interested in breaking the cycle in disconnected dads who were once sons and young teens, then I want you to type, once I get this posted, I want you to type cycle below this, and I'm going to send you the registration for a free masterclass that has my 3 proven pillars to be part of breaking this cycle and inviting disconnected dads to the table and changing the cycle where it starts with your sons in your own home. So type cycle below as soon as I get this posted, and I'll get that registration link to you. Thank you for joining me today. Mwah! I'll see you next week.